Good morning, this is Mrs. Eisenbuttle, and today I am going to give you a quick introduction or a quick review, depending on where you are in the set of classes, to Autodesk Inventor Pro 2014. So when you open up Autodesk Inventor Pro, usually you get this window, or sometimes it will automatically come up and ask you what you want to do. You want to create some sort of a new file. You'll notice over here on the side you have both English and metric options. When we do metric, we normally do a standard millimeter metric, and when we do English, we usually do standard inches or standard inch IPT. We're just going to do a standard inch one today, so we're just going to double click on that, or you can click it and create. Press the create button. Once you get this created, then the very first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to go over to Tools, Application Options, and you're going to come over here to where it says Colors. I have mine set to Presentation, but a lot of times when you start, you will have it look like this, which you would think would not be a huge deal, but it's a giant pain. You see how dark that is? It's actually really hard to see a lot of things on a super dark background. That's why I go Presentation, one color, and then hit Apply, and then you get a completely white background, which is what you want to start with because it's a lot easier to draw on. So that's tip number one. White background helps out a lot. Then we're going to go back to the 3D Model tab. Now, just as a reminder, all the things up here on the top, these are all your basic commands like save, open, undo, stuff like that. This here's your ribbon, and you can change what the ribbon looks like by clicking on different tabs on the ribbon. Just as a reminder, we don't use some of these all that often. 3D Model is usually the first one you learn how to do things with. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a 2D sketch. So we're going to click on Create 2D Sketch, and then it brings up this and says, where do you want to put it? Rather than just randomly clicking on one of the planes, I usually like to open the origin and make sure I'm always putting it on the XY. It doesn't really matter which plane you put it on, but it shows up better in some planes than in others. So just try to be consistent and always pick the same plane. Like I said, I like to pick the XY, just because that's a background that we all have from doing graphing and things. So I'm going to create a basic rectangle shape. I'm just going to draw it here. I click on it. I right click and OK, and then I go over and click on dimension. I'm going to tell it how big the sides are. So I'm going to make it 1.5 inches by 1 inch. And so there I have 1 inch by 1.5 inches. I'm going to hit Finish My Sketch, click on an edge, and go to Extrude. I'm then going to tell it to extrude out 3 inches. Now, notice, yes, I could use this down here, but I very rarely do because I like to change different things. Like I can select Profile, I can tell it which direction to extrude things. I can do all of that from here. I like to actually look at the whole window. It's not a huge thing, but you might decide that you as well will like to look at the whole window because it makes a lot more sense than trying to just look at part of a window down here in the little profile. So I'm going to extrude that out 3 inches. I'm going to use my mouse and roll out so I can see the whole thing. And now you can see I've got I can click Home, a simple 1 inch by 1.5 inch rectangle that's been extruded out 3 inches. Now on the top of it I'm going to create a sketch. That's what that button is for. So back up 1 second here. I'm back at Home, regular left click over here to create sketch. You can also edit a sketch and edit and extrude from the same spot. I want to create a new sketch, and I used my mouse to zoom in a little so I could see it better. I'm going to put a couple of points on here. Notice how I get the dotted lines when they line up. That's a good shorthand way of making sure that your points are all square to each other. So when I'm done, I right click OK, and I finish my sketch. Now I'm going to click on one of the points. See how it goes red? Regular left click, over to the hole feature, and I'm going to turn all 4 of them. I click on each one of them in turn. I move that stupid thing out of my way. There we go. So now I'm making 4 holes. Each point is going to become a hole. I do want it to go all the way through, but I'm going to make it have, do you see how that gives it this internal like drill down so that when you put screws in, they'll actually sit flat? You can change how wide the hole is. This is a 0.375 hole. The indent is 0.25, and the width of the actual screw area is 0.25. And I have it going all the way through. I can change all of that information here if I want to. I'm just going to hit OK so you can see it. And I'm going to rotate my sketch so you can see the lip there. And rotate a little more, see the holes go all the way through. So when I click home, there's where I go. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to again left click. I'm going to create a new sketch, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle. Just random rectangle. Right click OK, and then I'm going to dimension this rectangle, and I'm going to say it's 0.5 of an inch, and I'm going to make this side also be 0.5 of an inch. And now I want to center it, but I can't remember how big this side was, so I'm just going to click and pull it off. Okay, it's 1 inch. If I hit accept, you see how it puts parentheses on it? That means I can't change that dimension, but it will tell me what it is, which is all I want. So I'm going to come here and I want to put this in the center, right? So if I put it at 0.5, what happens? Notice it centers my box down 0.5, which puts the edge of my rectangle ½ an inch down, which isn't where I want it. I want to center it. So I want to put it half of a half, which is 1/4 of an inch, 0.25. So there we go. Now it's centered down, and you're going to say, oh, well, how big was this? It's 3 inches. And I'm going to say, oh, well, half of 3 inches is 1/2, right? So if I put 1.5, see, it's slightly off center because it's centering that edge at exactly center of the original rectangle, which is fine. In this case, I'm just going to leave it. So I'm going to finish my sketch. I'm going to click on one of these lines, and I'm going to click on extrude. Now I have to tell it what I'm extruding. This is extremely important because I often have people go over here and make all sorts of changes, and then they don't realize why they can't click on anything, or they end up extruding the wrong thing. I just want to extrude the center piece, but I don't want it to come out 3 inches. I want it to come out ½ an inch. So I just type in ½ inch and hit OK. And now when I click home, you can see I have this ½ inch by ½ inch cube that is now sticking off the side here. So I'm going to come over here, last piece, I'm going to create a sketch on the end. And again, I'm going to use, in this case, let's use an ellipse, which is a fancy way of saying an oval. And I'm going to create it, I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to move it by grabbing its centerpiece and putting it where I want it, which in this case is here. But if I want to make it bigger, I can click on an edge and sort of drag it around. And sometimes ellipses are a little wonky because you have to be kind of careful. They're very hard to get your measurements perfect, but that's okay because we're just doing an example. So we're going to finish our sketch, and we are going to click on the line when it goes red. I'm going to click on extrude, but this time I don't want to come out. It shows it coming out ½ inch, but I want to actually go back. So you see how I can click on different things here? That's a cut, and when I leave my mouse over things, it tells me what they do. Well, I don't want to cut just ½ inch. I want to go all the way through. So notice, now it's going to cut all the way through. And I can say, okay, great, that's what I want. And so I can hit OK. It is now cut all the way through, so when I look at it, you can actually see the holes that I drilled. It has cut through them. So when I hit home, I can come look here and see straight through. I have an extrude on that side. I can still see straight through all those holes I originally drilled, but now notice it has drilled through so that I actually have these outlines still here. which is fine. I can also now come back to the home. I can go in and change all sorts of things by going to the different options up here. I can click on these and I can change, I can manage all sorts of things. I can change the appearance. I can go into view and put shadows on things. I can go into environments and all sorts of other things and change my backgrounds. I'm actually just going to quickly pick one here, and I like to pick from the, I'm going to make it gold on the top face so that it looks like gold. And then I'm going to click this one and make it something else. I'm going to come down and make it magenta. There we go. So I made it a color. And you can do that to all the faces. You can also select everything and make everything all one by clicking on everything all at once and saying, okay, I want everything to be one color. But the reality is you can also go in and make different pieces. Now don't forget, you also have, like on your edges, I can fillet an edge, which means to round it. I would definitely recommend opening this up and noticing how big your fillet is. I can apply that one and see what it does. It makes my interior rounded now, so it's not a crisp oval like it was on that side. So that's a fillet, but you can also do chamfers. Chamfers, notice, are just taking a rough edge and chopping it off. A fillet is more of a fold to make it look nicer. But either way is fine. You can also take your holes and put threads on them for a screw and all those sorts of things. So there's a basic intro to Autodesk 2014.